Welcome to our journey how Charles and I restored a 1772 house in Coventry, Rhode Island. The house that no one wanted and was to be demolished and replaced with new homes. After convincing the owner to let us purchase it, he then insisted we have at least 1 acre of land and the control of a small pond next to the house. Thus it became Hopkins Hill Acre. It was a Cape Cod house with 6 rooms downstairs and 2 small rooms upstairs. It had a huge central chimney supporting 4 fireplaces. The L was not part of the original house. The house was built and lived in by Ezekiel Potter and his family from 1735 to 1811 and is buried in the historical cemetery in Coventry. The very week we secured financing and were ready to take ownership, the house was set on fire by vandals. That was in October of 1970. But much thanks goes to the Hopkins Hill Volunteer Fire Department, who worked so vigorously and saved it. This is a newspaper article as we watched our house burn. Here is the view of the back of the house and the roof where it was damaged. This is debris thrown out the back window. And this depicts where the gasoline was thrown on the back of the house. This is the back L of the house. This is the roof as it was covered up and boarded up after the fire. Adding a full dormer on the back of the house, allowing us to get 3 bedrooms with closets and a full bathroom. After the renegotiations were settled and the purchase was complete, there were many things going on simultaneously. The basement was dug deeper so one could stand and walk around the full cellar. There we discovered the hearth that had fallen from the fireplace in the keeping room. In the center of the basement were 2 separate columns, each being about 2 foot wide, 4 foot long, and about a 4-foot space between each column. This was holding up the 4 fireplaces above in the house. The main beam that the fireplaces had rotted out. This was a top priority to replace this oak beam, which was 14 by 14 by 10, and it was cut in a sawmill in Exeter, Rhode Island. A company then came and jacked the 4 corners of the house up just to replace that one beam. After the basement beam was secure and the house was now on solid stone and granite, the dormer and the roof was started. When the dormer and the roof were finished, new windows throughout the house were made, which were reproduced from the originals, being 8/8 in the front of the house and 9/9 in the back of the house. Many of the interior window sills had to be replaced. Charles used handmade planes to match the originals. Once the windows were in and the house was secure from the weather, we started on the interior. Our 2 biggest challenges were deciding how the bathrooms and the kitchen were designed, because the water, septic, and wiring was to be placed. We had a contractor for those jobs. The L of the house consisted of 2 small and 1 larger room. One of the smaller rooms held a hand pump connected to the hand-dug well just adjacent to the house. The other small room served as a storage area. We removed all the walls and made 1 room. Charles built the kitchen, and we had a 2 by 7 foot oak to separate the working kitchen from the dining area. This was a storage area. This was the doorway. This shows you the doorway leading to the keeping room. You can see where the basement wall was broken through to bring pipes and wiring under the floor and into the kitchen. We had a chimney built in the basement to accommodate an old Glenwood kitchen stove, which we used in the winter to warm the floors. This is where the hand pump was removed. Here are the cabinets are going in, and the kitchen is starting to take shape. This is where that beautiful piece of oak counter went in to separate the kitchen. At this point, I had a basic kitchen. It would take some time before the cabinet doors were added. We had purchased a truckload of pine boards from a sawmill in Scituate, ranging from 7 to 14-foot wide boards, which stayed under our bed for curing for ages. It took quite some time for the kitchen to get to this stage. The beam over the counter held all the treasures that I had inherited and collected. When the hand pump once was, now stood my refrigerator. Now look at these children. I love this picture. These are two happy children. My oldest daughter was asked by her teacher how she liked her new home. Melanie said, "It's like camping out all the time." Keeping room before we started to do any work. And in the back, you can see the windows, 9/9 in the back of the house. This is how we found the fireplace, how it looked originally. Charles is preparing the floor for the hearth to be replaced that had been recovered when we were digging out the basement. The beehive oven had to be rebuilt, and this is a storage such as for dry kindling. And this is a completed fireplace and oven and all the cooking utensils. Matt all took it out. Melanie in front of the fireplace, where we found the original huge crane, and surprisingly it was still there. Matt on his truck, and Melissa in her body cast. This was our first Christmas, and the children are much happier now. Charles made this settle, which fit all three kids just in front of the fireplace. Adjacent to the keeping room was the boarding room. This became our bathroom. Charles pulling out the old plaster off the laths. Charles and his friend building the bathroom cabinets. The cabinet almost finished. The sinks I purchased in Boston to be reminiscent of the old pitcher and bowl sets. And of course, our cat Cinnamon liked to drink from that running water. The finished bathroom was done in cobalt blue and gold. I found the mirror upstairs and regilded it. The downstairs bedroom was adjacent to the bathroom. Outside this window was where the fire had burned. We removed that wall to make a larger bedroom. The wall was boards with old newspaper, which was used with plaster and connected to another bedroom. Charles Jr. is helping to remove the wall. We worked on the bedroom in stages, just one side, then later the other. Matt in the middle of everything, supervising. Notice the corner beams. They all had just a beading over the wood. The fireplace was in the bedroom next to the bathroom. All the doors had thumb latches. Only 2 doors in the back of the house were plank doors with pintles driven into the wall. Working on the fireplace, stripping off the old paint. Some rooms had up to 6 coats of old paint. Matt and Melissa helping to paint the door in an olive green matched to Waverly wallpaper and matching fabric for curtains. As you entered the living room from the bedroom, there was a fireplace larger than the one in the bedroom. Charles is standing in the doorway leading to the front hall. Before renovations started, Antoinette Downing, the Rhode Island advisor of Newport Restorations, came and gave us ideas, knowledge, and advice on how to best preserve as well as modernize the house. She said the house had evidence of 6 different trees in its construction, and she left us with color palettes for reference. The Potter family was not wealthy, but not impoverished. The panel doors in the front of the house and 6/6 panes of glass in the front was a sign of some social standing. The living room was mustard yellow. I bought the frame of this sofa for $5. Charles refinished the wood, and my friend Estelle reupholstered it in gold velveteen that matched the wallpaper perfectly. This cabinet was shipped to me from my aunt. As the story goes, my great-grandfather, John L. Clark, was a manufacturer of caskets in Providence, Rhode Island. A man in Newport had a son that died of a communicable disease, and John L. made a glass dome casket for him, and the man gave this cabinet. I have never been able to authenticate this story. Now moving into the front hall. Upon purchase of the house, plywood covered the floor in the front hall. What a surprise when we pulled that plywood up. These very narrow and steep stairs led up to the second floor. And surprisingly, my 3 kids never fell down those stairs. The front hall was also painted blue. All the thumb latches had been stolen. We purchased before we purchased the house. On Sunday mornings, I would go to the Rocky Hill Fairgrounds flea market and hunt for old latches. Of course, most were missing parts. My husband sent them to the forger in Strawberry Bank. We would get them back as completed latches. The original door was restored by Charles, who filled its cracks and surrounded each individual panel with new molding. Having finished restoring the door, it was rehung on its hinges, timed perfectly for the changing weather. Pete, up on the ladder, had worked alongside us from the very beginning as if he were an additional pair of hands. He nailed all the loose shingles around the house and had dug out the basement prior to this. Our custom forged bolt lock for the front entrance came in from Strawberry Bank and was put in place, completing the entryway. The 5 panes of hand-blown glass over the front door was taken from my mom and dad's 1830 schoolhouse in Charleston, Rhode Island. These 2 pictures provide perspective of how cramped the rooms would have been without the added dormer. The areas impacted by the flames. The dormer was constructed and petitions added to create 3 bedrooms and a full bathroom. The new spaces were sheetrocked, insulated, and fitted with 10 to 12-inch wide pine floorboards. Baseboard heating was also installed throughout. Finally, the kids' rooms were ready. This image was snapped from the backyard upon obtaining the home. We later enclosed the front area with a large central window and installed a new roof overhead. A very welcome visitor and local Coventry historian, George Matson, told me that the tavern a few miles south on Hopkins Hill Road would have their carriages and wagons repaired here. He also said next door to our pond was the food storage used by the Indians as they passed through. I conveyed this story to the University of Massachusetts, as they did an archaeological dig and did find some artifacts to authenticate the story. That did save some frontage of the property when the road was widened. Once the shed was fully enclosed, Charles utilized it for his personal workshop, while I took a small section for my business. Thanks to the help of my family, friends, like the Kellys, the Silvers, and the Burtons, the house was now presentable for a house tour celebrating Coventry's bicentennial. And also my Uncle Andrew for challenging and encouraging me to investigate my Clark genealogy. I have spent the last 60 years researching and was happy to learn of my own ancestors' connection with the Ezekiel Potter House of Hopkins Hill through my Lewis, my Capron, Huling, and Tourgee family lines in and around southern Rhode Island. Thank you for allowing Charles and I to share our journey from the restoration's beginning with a basic shell and transforming it into a charming, historic home that proudly stands today. You might say, from ruins to treasure. Yours truly, Charles and Nancy Morrow.